Yeah, so this is the whole infrastructure layer. We got the whole stack here, so it's not just one part of the stack. And we're doing this because all the institutions that are here and have been talking to us, they look at DeFi, they want access, and they want to understand the whole stack. They want to know like ecosystem across every part of the stack, and we have that whole group here, and we want to break down what each of these layers means to contributing to Solana's DeFi ecosystem. And I'm just going to let everybody go one by one, give a little one-liner about where their protocol sits on the stack. Start with you.
Okay, yeah, so I'm a product lead at MetaMask, and we actually just added Solana support this week. So really excited to be here. And yeah, I lead the product group that was building that Solana integration and is responsible for new networks that we're adding. Yeah.
About damn time. Yeah, my name is Joanna. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Soon. So we're doing SVM stack for network extension. So we're very excited about bringing the Solana top performance across ecosystems. Specifically, the one thing is like we're bringing these Ethereum and we have BNB chain and then also Base liquidity, like bringing this liquidity into the SVM ecosystem. So folks that like we're actually onboarding a lot of Web2 users. I'll talk about that in a little bit through this like new app. So that is the approach that we're taking to bring these Web2 users to the Web3 world, whereas not necessarily just like everyone works on one chain, multi-chain, cross-chain experience.
Hi, hi. I'm FP, co-founder of Sanctum. Sanctum does liquid staking on Solana, but in kind of like a weird way. So we work with like protocols like Drift. We help them issue like yield-bearing Solana tokens. So Drift has like Drift Sol, and then we basically allow anyone to issue their own liquid staking token, and then we build like the unified liquidity layer that allows all of these liquid staking tokens to coexist and not have not be very illiquid. Yeah, so making them actually liquid. Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Robin, co-founder and CEO of Raiku. We accelerate Solana with deterministic inclusion, exponential compute to make applications on the L1 exponentially faster, but also enable new application architectures which can be thought of as extensions or edge compute, which enables completely new use cases on the network.
Awesome. I guess I'll start with you, Christian. I wanted to ask, you just dropped that MetaMask is supporting Solana. We've been trying to get MetaMask to support Solana for like 2 or 3 years now. Maybe you can talk about what was the challenge in doing that, and then additionally, like what friction points does MetaMask remove for both institutions and retail?
Sure, yeah, so, one of the challenges was essentially MetaMask was built to support EVM, which is the virtual machine behind Ethereum. And so a lot of the assumptions in the code base were built around Ethereum. And so we had to massively overhaul our code base to make it more generic and more modular and to be able to support networks like Solana. And so that's been a big undertaking over the past year as we've been just completely revamping our code base and to now be able to introduce Solana accounts. We're also working on, and later this year we'll have like a full like multi-chain account model, so it'll be much easier to add accounts on different networks in the future, and for a user it'll be much more seamless as they're moving between networks. And really what users expect is just, regardless of which network I'm on, ultimately I'm just dealing with assets and moving liquidity around, and so it should feel like a consistent experience regardless of the underlying networks that they're interacting with. MetaMask has, used to have what we call MetaMask Institutional as a separate product. That's actually now part of the main MetaMask retail product. That's still very much EVM focused, but what we're looking at in terms of like supporting Solana and other networks in the future is just all the different primitives that a user should be able to access through MetaMask, and then ultimately the kind of information that they get, right? So whether it's like simulations for whatever actions they're performing, or warnings about malicious addresses and contracts and programs and so forth, or even like the ability to do like multi-party, signing and different levels of permissions, which we'll talk about more later. That's really where we're looking to expand and improve the experience.
Nice. I could keep asking more and more questions about. I guess move to Joanna. So, do you want to talk about Simp for .fun and how that uses Drift data and what your plans are for that going forward, or like how that sits on the Soon stack?
Yeah, for sure. I think we, as mentioned before, right, we're kind of like walking away from a pure infra play as the line between infra and apps is like blurring, right? You see a prime example is like Hyperliquid. So yeah, the one thing that we've been working on very hard these days is finding these killer use cases to stress test our own tech stack with like consumer app like at the front and center. So what we're collaborating with Drift on, very excited to announce this, is essentially a copy trading platform that is sitting on top of the Drift data, right? So people can like track the smart money, like these sophisticated traders, and then be able to do like a one-click deployment, right? And so this is built on Solana right now. We're going to, as mentioned, like be a little bit more like ecosystem agnostic and extend that to other like Soon chains. So the really like the kicker here is we're really not looking at just like the Web3 existing degens, but folks like streamers and gamers, right? So we're having a window, like pop-up window extension that's part of the live streaming platforms like Twitch and this other thing called Soup, S-O-O-P. It's the largest live streaming platform in Korea. And we can just directly onboard these people into this ecosystem, right? They just watch somebody live streaming their trading experience and do that one-click deployment the whole time without even leaving the live stream. So very much like an integrated Web2-like experience. So our thesis here is you would need SVM, right, with the high performance, low latency. No offense to the Ethereum crowd here, or yeah. Now you're no longer part of it, I'm sorry. Anyway, so yeah, the SVM became the requirement, right, to have that Web2-like experience. So we're really just building up to this point the infra to have like a means to the end, right, where we actually can grow the overall pie and get more folks into this ecosystem.
Nice. Okay, so now let's go to staking in the backend layer. And I guess FP, I wanted to ask you about the reasoning behind the every validator, every LST model, and then how does that play into the capital efficiency like that we've just been stressing all day in Drift?
Yeah, so this, when we first started Sanctum, we had this tagline called like infinite LSTs, and and when I first pitched it, the response was like, that's retarded. Like why, no, this doesn't work, right? LSTs compete on moneyness, right? Look at Lido, right? And I think that, okay, I'll tell you why it kind of works on Solana, but I'll tell you why kind of like why I think it's inevitable. So on Solana, really the idea is that if you are bullish on Solana, you believe that people want to control part of this network because whoever controls Sol will control sort of like everything about the network, transaction inclusion, right, everything, right? And that's like a really, really like key component of why Solana has the value it has. And so like everyone is wanting to get like a pie, like a piece of that pie. So what we do really when we talk about sort of like LST issuance is really we give the tools to protocols, but not just I mean, you said every validator, but it's not actually every validator. It's like everyone, like any of you guys could issue an LST. I mean, probably most of the LSTs would be shit, but like, if you're someone with like good distribution, like a good brand, right? Like Drift, right? Phantom, Jupiter, this kind of stuff, right? Like that. It makes sense that if you can command sort of like attention, someone can hold your Sol token, and then you'll be able to control that piece of the network, right? And you'll be able to make money on that, obviously, from staking rewards and so on. So really, that's the idea. And I like. Today it's Drift and Jupiter, and tomorrow it might be McDonald's and Starbucks, whatever, maybe, and the reason why this is like possible is because of like a really, really like technical detail on like how stake accounts work on Ethereum and on Solana versus how staking works on Ethereum, and I shan't go into that. But the idea is that the marginal cost of kind of like launching an LST is minimal if you build out this like unified liquidity layer. So the secret sauce of Sanctum really is in that unified liquidity layer that we built. We allow kind of like every LST to be swapped for every other LST, to be swapped for Sol, right? And so that we take care of all of that for you, and you as a protocol or as a person or whatever, you just issue the token, and then you, as long as you can get people to hold it, like we handle like all of that infrastructure under the hood. So that's like a pretty compelling product. And it's like really, there are good advantages, right? Like Drift can sort of like, because it's their validator, they control the whole stack, they don't have to worry about the stuff, they can put it in their amplified products and stuff like that. And it's like, it's really good for kind of like capital efficiency, and it's really good for kind of like the proliferation of liquid staking in general.
Yeah, Drift's been. I guess I've always been chatting with you in Telegram, but I never saw you in person. This is great. Okay, so Robin, I guess I wanted to ask. So Raiku's solving for guaranteed inclusion and deterministic execution, which is what people have been trying to solve in Solana for. I don't know. Every year they talk about it forever.
Always.
Yeah. How are you gonna basically enforce that across the decentralized validator set?
So Raiku consists of two primary components. You have the sidecar, which is integrated to a validator. Currently today it's Agave compatible, but it's going to be Firedance compatible later before mainnet this year. And then you have the Raiku or Ackermann node, which is this coordination network. Now many people don't really get what we mean by coordination network, but it's where you send transactions, which will then find the fastest inclusion path, which talks to the sidecars of the Solana network, the validators. It's also what enables new transaction types. One of the core features of Raiku is our ahead-of-time block space marketplace, which allows you to reserve what we call inclusion signals. So inclusion signals is sent every, let's say, 60 seconds. Applications can then reserve an inclusion signal, then they can then confirm this transaction ahead of time. But it also allows you to stream transactions from external environments, overall really pushing the limits of speed, the transaction size, and the guarantee that comes with. Validators, they give a credible commitment. Credible commitment basically means whatever you send me, I will include. They have to follow certain rules, and if they don't follow those rules, Raiku will take care of that. As a political answer.
So an application can like reserve a future slot inclusion, or is like what is the window, I guess?
Yeah. So you'll be able to reserve slot inclusion signals actually every 20 to 40 milliseconds, not 60 seconds. You can wait 60 seconds to send a transaction, but you will be able to receive these inclusion signals every 20 to 40 milliseconds. And in that way, you'll be able to then confirm that this transaction will actually happen a lot quicker. That's on, for example, mainnet for any application on the L1 today. But imagine you can also have an external system. We can call it a network extension, an L2. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but you receive inclusion signals, let's say every 20 milliseconds, with a promise that whatever you will send to the network, it will be included. Now you can plan for how you want to order and sequence the transactions in your scheduler in itself, and then you can batch those transactions and send them down. Everything will be just exponentially faster with that deterministic guaranteed result.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Christian what he thinks of, because he's working in institutions. Is this something that they care about, or like what apps do you think would benefit from this?
Yeah, I mean, the current paradigm on Solana for the average retail user, where you just accept that sometimes your transactions fail, you don't get included, right? You can't really guarantee when you land. I don't think that's obviously not something that institutions would stomach long term, right? Institutions want to be able to like make a trade, like operate on some real-time data, right, and then be able to like guarantee their inclusion, right? So it's something that like, the expectation of institutions which would potentially be making trades on a regular basis and potentially with size and actually acting on like real-time information, they're going to want something that they can guarantee, right? So any kind of guarantee that you can give them on Solana, coupled with the speed, right? Solana with the speed without the guarantees of inclusion is halfway there, right? So if you can guarantee that, that's really powerful.
It's also where the network is heading. Like with Alpenglow, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
for sure.
Nice. I guess what I want to ask about. Okay, this is an open question for everybody. So whoever has the best answer, just jump in and answer it first. But I guess if the wallet is the shell for the user to interact with these points in the stack, like how tight should the back end be, like, or how tightly integrated should that wallet be with the rest of the stack? Like, should wallets be more like dashboards, or should they be more like should they be parts of the UI, or should they just be focused on like the transaction signing?
I mean, I can tell you from the perspective of the users who are using MetaMask, right, and what they expect, right. The reality is that, and especially for institutional customers, right, the accounts themselves are portable, right. They may have a custodian that they work with, and they may be essentially importing that account into a wallet like MetaMask, and they may use MetaMask to then go and interact with dApps, which they can't do through their custodial provider directly, right. And one of the main expectations is everything has to match between the different interfaces that I have, right? So MetaMask has to have the same level of liveness as what they see on chain. When they make a transaction in another application, they want to see that in their history in MetaMask. They want to see the status of things. They want to see everything incoming, right? So your liveness within your wallet has to be as good as everything else, right? And so any sort of like delay, then they're wondering, I made a transaction, I don't see it in MetaMask. Why is that, right? Or why am I not seeing this token that just recently launched and I can see it on some other dashboard, but I don't see it in MetaMask, right? So those types of expectations proliferate through all the different interfaces, and everyone has to be able to keep up with those user expectations because the network is driving those user expectations, right? The speed of the network then forces everybody to keep up, right? And so ultimately, in terms of infrastructure, you get to the point of, okay, now we need a streaming provider, right? We need real-time data. We need to be able to keep up with the speed of the transactions that are happening on chain. We need to be able to read very fast. We need to be able to have token data, price data, alerts, all those kinds of things within the application itself. And that's just the basics of like, even if you are just signing, you have to be able to do those things. And then beyond that, to get into like, dashboards of like, more like, general information about like the market, prices, different, assets and so forth, then that becomes like a second stage of like the nice to have, like what gives everyone like a really good experience. Because to some extent, they're going to get that from other places. Like they're going to use the wallet to connect to different decentralized apps that provide them that information. But then the more that you put that into that wallet, it reduces a lot of the like friction of moving back and forth between different interfaces.
And I'm sure like Sanctum has had, with all the LSTs that you guys have, like you need to think a lot about the wallet experience. Like
one of the problems that we get is that we have a long tail of LSTs, which is good, but the ones that are not actively traded, the price doesn't show up on Phantom. So I hope that MetaMask can fix this issue. But I think I have a very kind of like uneducated take on wallets, but I'm just thinking we kind of conflate. There are two senses of the word wallets, right? Like there's this key secure kernel, like it's a private key store and its ability to sign a transaction, right? That's a wallet, and then it's all of that other stuff, right? Which is like the app, and it shows you NFTs, and it's a dApp browser, and it's all of that stuff, and it's and it's like I think really is. There's that maximalist conception of the wallet, and there's a minimalist conception of the wallet. And obviously, as a wallet, you want to be as maximalist as possible. But I wonder if wallets should be as minimalist as possible and then have the apps like, yeah.
That's the ongoing debate I have with my colleagues. I can guarantee you. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is like the actual like key management could be somewhere else, right? Like when you're talking about like us working with custodians, we don't actually necessarily manage the keys. We are signing the transactions. That's the main thing. But it's no longer possible to say, okay, I just signed the transaction and then go look on the block explorer to see the confirmation, right? Like you're expected to have that information, right? And so you're essentially expected to have enough information in the interface that the user sees that the action I just performed, I want to see the result of it, right? And I want to see my assets updating in real time. And I want to know what's pending. I want to know what assets I actually can spend right now and what may be in a transaction that's in the process of being executed, right? So that's just like, that's the baseline. Yeah, that's the baseline at this point.
Yeah, we don't want to scare anybody with missing assets for 12 seconds, so like nobody knows where. Okay, I guess like just on that dashboard piece, like the Drift copy trade thing is like quite robust, and that's like, it's like deeper derived data information trying to tell you something. I guess. Is this something that you could see going, like right now it's primarily for maybe a retail audience, but is there an institution or more sophisticated actor angle that you think like you're going for?
Yeah, definitely. I think the idea is to like, how do we like take Wall Street on chain, right? Like the traditional finance investors, they didn't have this kind of a constrained idea of like, if you trade on Drift, you have to be like a very complex, or what is the word I'm looking for, sophisticated, degen, right, in order to like do that. And then the other thing I think it's been like more important than maybe just the UI piece is like they want to get access to these Web2 like existing like real world assets, right? So that's why I think big props to you guys, right, launching the Drift institutional. And I think that's like in line with what Solana ecosystem is doing in general with the internet capital markets, right? Continue to onboard these various assets, like not only the U.S. stocks, but like oil, gold, and other type of assets on chain. So now like the Web2 traditional finance investors can get access to those assets as well, for higher yield, right? So why not? It's becoming more of a no-brainer that way. So our idea is like starting with the retail users, just because that's, I think that live streaming crowd. Like, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys do like, live gaming. It's just a fun way to get these like a traditional like people that are already interested in trading, right, to over the door. And I think now with the RWA, like the overall backdrop, right, that can appeal to the traditional crowd as well. So I think all of these pieces is coming together as we see the overall vision of Solana's on-chain Nasdaq vision. It's like finally coming together.
Yes, on-chain Nasdaq. Okay, so I'm going to run a hypothetical, and I want to bring Robin to first answer this. So. Hypothetical is that I'm an institutional allocator. I'm running a big book. I'm looking to get some DeFi integration into my operation. Like, how much do you think they need to understand to like fit the pieces together? Like, are they like, what's like the relationship? Like, are they going to reach out to one of these application teams and be like, hold my hand, tell me everything I need to know, get me in here? Or do you think they need to like understand the full stack? For things that they interact with.
But what do they want to do? Is it trading or staking or anything?
Maybe just like this lending or something to start, or like something. The thing is like with yours tailored to like active trading, like hyper active trading. So let's like do that.
Yeah, but we're an infrastructure provider, so it's B2B, and then the actual application in itself will then go to the customer or the institution, right? But I think in our case, it's important. We're focusing a lot on making sure that we can meet the functional requirements of institutions like high-frequency trading firms, etc. Making sure that we do have the infrastructure components such that applications can easily deploy infrastructure that the HFT provider needs. That's what we're thinking about, right? The functional pragmatic requirements that they have is a bit different because we're not in the application sphere.
I guess like where does the risk sit? I guess for those people in the stack, is it just like like when they're interacting with DeFi, like where is most of the risk clustered for somebody who's an institution and like on the fence of like deciding to get involved in DeFi?
I guess if you get hacked, that's a pretty big one. Contract risk overall. The question is like, has the application any risk assumptions other than the underlying like trust assumption of the L1 in itself? That's a big one, right? Other than the obvious hacking standpoint. Oracle issues, I think that's a pretty prominent issue for institutions in itself. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you talk to institutions, like where are their concerns in the Sanctum side, if there are any? I mean, where are they hesitant about, or where they need more education?
I think institutions is kind of like a big word, right? Like, and it really depends. Are you talking to, that's like, even when you talk about institutions, there's a pension fund and a liquid fund, and a pension fund's not a liquid fund. And we talk about liquid fund, there are liquid funds on a whole spectrum of degen side, right? They're like,
Okay.
we'll ape, like.
How about for like the Binance and like those LST integrations with let's just start there. Like they already have a better understanding.
Yeah. So first there's an education process, right? Why they can issue, and then like to convince them that it actually makes sense and like that our liquidity layer actually performs as advertised, and there's a lot of like trust building there. Yeah.
It's just like trust building. They ask the questions.
I mean,
you
have
answer
to
the questions,
we have to demonstrate that our product performs as advertised. Yes.
Okay. I guess who gets the user's trust in a world of L2s, wallets, staking layers, coordination engines, like, because when they're interacting with Sanctum, like they have to trust Solana already to interact with you, and then I guess when it's an L2 or like a coordination layer, like.
In our case, we're not introducing any trust assumptions.
No trust assumptions. Okay.
No, that'll be bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'll chime in on that. We kind of like took a different approach, right? So we used Solana. The best part of it is like execution engine. Like we decouple the user execution threads from the voting threads. As L2, you don't need the consensus layer. So we did like a derivation pipeline to link between the L1 and L2. So on the L1 side, like we have the trust assumption of the Ethereum and EVM based layers, like any EVM based L1s, and then basically using that like kind of like the best of the two worlds, right, between the ETH side and the Solana side. So like the hard part is really like what you were saying. It's very hard to put the SVM executors on top of Ethereum in a native way that like it's still your user funds can be like trusted and not just building like a multi-sig, right, between two sovereign chains, but like an actual roll up with with like the ZK fraud proof on the back end, right? So there's a challenging period, and your funds is locked on L1 until proven otherwise, right? So all of that is like following the classic like Ethereum L2 model, but just really swap in the best part of Solana is like SVM mini engine, yeah.
Nice. Okay, I guess I also wanted to try to get your guys' predictions on something. So, in the next 12 months, what is the most valuable piece of the DeFi infrastructure stack, and why?
Deterministic and fast inclusion. Simple.
Everybody just says their project. Okay.
Nah, but
why?
I mean, if you can make an application on a distributed system as powerful as a centralized one that you run in like a traditional industry, TradFi basically, that's pretty big. So I think, yeah, that's a huge piece that is upcoming. I think RFQ systems is quite cool because you'll be able to port liquidity from other ecosystems. Like, for example, wormhole settlement, not that it's an RFQ, but it's a solver network, right? Like RFQ systems is a solver network at the end of the day. I think that's a pretty big one, as you'll be able to port liquidity from other ecosystems quite well, and then use Solana as a central liquidity hub. And that works well with an external application architecture as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I have a bit of a non-consensus view. So been talking to Anza about this, right? Like, I think we need a light client for Solana. You can't do that without adding like Merkle root into the SVM. And yeah, we did some like very extensive research on that to add Merkleization to SVM. And yeah, basically, if we have a light client of Solana, then we can like basically reduce a lot of those overhead on the consensus like validator set, and just be able to kind of experiment more with less like basically less like hardware requirement in order to participate in the in the current validator like race, right? You have to really be like really complicated like GPU hardware in order to become the leader, all of that. So yeah, just introducing a lot of like new innovation on the like experimenting different consensus mechanism.
I can tell you the thing that I've been struggling with the most, which is having access to like high level requirement of like indexing and streaming of actual read data, right? So like writing to the blockchain is one thing, but being able to read it. There's some providers now like the Graph that are actually like starting to really make a lot of progress here. But yeah, and if you're building any kind of application, like this is probably where you're struggling the most, is just being able to read the data as quickly as possible.
Especially archival node. We
Yeah.
need more
Yeah.
better historical
Getting
data
up to speed,
indexing.
and if you fall behind and you need to catch up again, and you need to get back up to head, that's pretty much where we need to see a lot more innovation and a lot more providers come online for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if you think about this too, but the seeing the historical performance of like the trades in my wallet, for whatever reason, is like impossible anywhere, or like maybe they don't want to they don't want you to know, or like I don't know what it is, but it's really hard to build that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cost associated with just bringing in that kind of data, and you don't actually. I mean, the way the revenue model works, you don't make money from reads, right? But like driving that cost down so that like interfaces can provide that level of data is a huge deal.
It's all there, so we can build it one day, right? And we're just
It's also expensive to pay the big table, right? Like all these Google, Web 2 players are just dominating that space. So unless like the RPC providers can build their own set, which is a huge infrastructure overhead in the beginning.
Well, if everybody's running their own node,
Yes, please
Hey,
build
yeah.
it.
Sorry, well, I was actually thinking about a question I wanted to ask. How do you reduce? What implementations have you done to reduce the read cost like so far? I assume this is a pretty big focus internally to Consensys.
I mean, we basically index internally, right? So we have Infura, right, and being able to then index that, and then on our own side, then being able to query that internally, so that we reduce the amount of data that each client's wallet, each instance is then having to pull, right? Is the next thing that we're doing. So, and we have a long ways to go in terms of like reducing the overhead of that, because that is probably the biggest. It's one of the biggest barriers to adding more networks, right? Especially as you go multi-chain, and now you need to read from like 10 different blockchains for a single account. That's where a lot of the overhead comes from.
Has there been any particular challenges between the implementation there in Ethereum and Solana? Because
it's a similar issue at the end of the day with like RPCs, and like Dune just announced their solution, which is called SIM, and they talked about like being able to provide like much more targeted, like specific data for an account, for an account's history and so forth. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we need, which is essentially like the least possible overhead of the queries that I'm making, right? To be able to get information, for a user.
Nice.
Okay, I think we're out of time, but I want everybody to give a round of applause for our amazing panel.